BodyBags, where horror lies.
Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe with week 503. Is that right? That's right, 503 here, BodyBags second week in, which means this week we're pulling a movie from a particular year. The year happens to be 1988, and there's a lot of days we do that. It's a lot of fun, but it is always cool and challenging to sometimes find a movie from a particular year. And chances are usually you don't have it on your shelf and you have to get it, and but that's not a terribly bad thing, because in these days of cancel culture and everything else, the more you can buy, the more you're able to buy. That is, you know, just a matter of time before it ends up on the hit list, as they say. Better in your collection than not ever being able to see it ever. And so here's one from Blast from the Past. You know, I can't remember renting this per se, although I do feel pretty good of remembering seeing this on the video shelf back in the day, going home with 5-6 videotapes for the weekend, right? And that is, of course, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers by Fred Olen Ray. Again, 1988 film. Pretty low budget film that was shot in about 5.5 days, I think, which is an amazing feat when you consider the film in of itself. And just it doesn't really look like it was, now does it look like it was made over the course of a year either, granted, but it really does look pretty sharp for just a 5.5 day venture, which I think he was splitting time on the set, or what the equipment was, he was splitting time with another project that I think he was helping with, and then for the weekends he was able to bring the equipment over and use the equipment for this. This does, though, man, this has a an interesting little bit of I'm trying to think of the right way to phrase it. He scored no pun intended. He scored big on this one, with just having Linnea Quigley in it as Samantha. What's his name? John Richardson as Jack is in here. Michelle Bauer, of course, as Mercedes. I think she had done some other films with Linnea Quigley as well. And of course, the coup was getting Gunnar Hansen involved in this. And of course, we all know him from Tobe Hooper's 1974 seminal classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This is an interesting little bit of a film. And I'll just say this too, the cinematographer on this would go on to shoot the Scream trilogy, which, you know, so the people on this project, a lot of them did go on to do other things and bigger things. That is the beauty of independent filmmaking, is a lot of times it's just a stepping stone to bigger, and maybe not necessarily better, but bigger opportunities, other opportunities. So this is Fred Olen Ray's own RetroMedia production, but funded mostly by Camp Motion Pictures. So anyways, what do you get with this, man? You get exactly what the title says. If you're squirmish about excessive nudity, or nudity that goes hand in hand with the use and application of chainsaws, probably should swerve the other way. But if you're into the B, like I know my friend Chris, who is our Friday reviewer at BodyBags, I think about these things sometimes. I know this is a film definitely up his alley. This had some interesting things to it. Basically, the plot isn't that complex, right? It is a mock noir sort of spoof, comedic spoof on, I think, the genre in itself. I think some of it goes into the actual AIP, American Independent Pictures, sort of thing. So anyways, basically what you have is a movie that revolves around an Egyptian-like chainsaw worshipping cult headed by none other than our hero Gunnar Hansen, who I have to say, it was really weird seeing Gunnar Hansen in this role, man. It was good, refreshing, it was fun. I wish he had more meat to chew on in this film. Of course, it is, I can't remember the runtime, but it's not the longest of films. Moves pretty quick, pacing pretty quick. But basically, this cult, man, they're out there just as we kind of get this weird, not weird, it's sort of a narrative flow by our main detective Jack, who is constantly narrating, which does get a little bit, I don't know, overdone at times, it feels like. But and he basically sort of paints this picture that the city is being just awashed in body parts coming out of the sewers. I wish we would have had some scenes of that mess. That would have been interesting. But basically, he's on the trail, actually, not of this, the doings of these missing people, but a missing runaway who is Linnea Quigley's character, Samantha, and who has, we find out, left home in search of a friend whose head ended up in a trash can. And so she wants to, think Dennis Hopper, actually, Texas Chainsaw 2. She's out to find whoever done this and basically tear the entire structure down, which makes for an interesting, a little part of the story, right? And so Jack, not knowing that he's going to get caught up in the bigger picture issue, what's happening in the city. Once he finds Samantha, of course, then he is going to also come head-on collision with the Egyptian chainsaw worshipping cult. Say that about 10 times quick. And so really that is the movie. That's really it. You do get some isolated scenes. Now, the soundstage this was used, a lot of times rooms were used multiple times. So, they would do the scene and then rush in, repaint the room, just to, make it just a little bit different. And then boom, another scene. In fact, I think it was Richardson said that sometimes you would come into the room and you were not allowed to touch the walls or anything because the paint was still wet, which makes working conditions a little interesting. Of course, it usually is in guerrilla filmmaking, right? And then, Linnea Quigley, of course, all of this ends up in this grand final, conclusion, right? Where Richardson Jack is going to be the sacrifice to this Egyptian cult group, and Samantha has been drugged and she is in a coffin. And when she comes out of the coffin, she's got her two chainsaws and she does this sort of ritualistic cultist kind of dance thing with the chainsaws. But the story behind it is, it's probably amazing that she's even alive, because as she tells it, she was, because the girls had a really hard time, well, anyone would have a hard time pulling a chainsaw to get it started. She had to be closed in this coffin, standing up coffin with the chainsaws running. So all that carbon monoxide is just building up. Plus, apparently, the paint job on her body took about 7.5 hours. So, there was a huge amount of exhaustive fatigue going on, plus all the poisoning she's going through. And so when that coffin gets open and she comes out, it's amazing that she didn't just fall flat on her face. And for her to have pulled off that scene is a credit to her as an actress. And you do hear a lot about those stories, don't you? Going back into the past, whatever set it was, whatever film it was, Alien or Shining or whatever. You always hear stories, incredible stories of what actors, just basically went through. And there's a lot of stories involved in here. And so, you do have your grand resolution towards the end. You do have a lot of weird little things in this movie that are a little bit questionable. The fact that Jack is chasing down a teenage runaway, only to end up in a love affair with her. It just begs the question of her age and everything else. But that's kind of what this movie is, man. This movie is just bonkers, sort of. It just loosely plays with a lot of things that on second, third thought, looking back, you kind of wonder if that was not sort of creepy. Gunnar Hansen, some of his, it seemed like at every, here's one scene where this oddball guy, man, he wants to do a photo shoot with one of these prostitutes. And the basic gist is they get their eyes on a particular guy, right? and they get him into the room, and to go through the motions and all of that jazz. And ultimately, in the end, once the guy in question is in the right position, they come out with the chainsaw, man, and just do a number on them. Of course, you have a sort of campy, body parts and fake blood splaying all over the place. It's all in, just sort of humor. I think where I was going with that, and so you kind of get that's sort of but anyways, the guy wants to do a photo shoot with one, and that's really creepy because the guy ultimately wants to sell a calendar full of nude girls holding chainsaws, or a baseball bat, and sell it off to little leaguers. And there's a lot of really sort of creepy stuff in here that you sort of laugh along with it as it's rolling, but then you kind of think back on it and you're like, yeah, that was a little weird. Gunnar Hansen's always in these, so like a scene like that, Gunnar Hansen is always kind of hiding off in the corner somewhere outside the window looking in, sort of a creeper man, just making sure these his minions are doing their job for their god that they worship. I think Richardson or Jack even mentions at one point when he's having his dialogue session with Gunnar Hansen, he's like, I don't think they had chainsaws way back then. And, it's a really campy, spoofy, again, a mock noir on the old days of noir filmmaking. And it does not take itself very seriously at all. It's meant to be absolutely just a riot, fun ride. But again, excessive nudity involved in here. And so, if that's just something to be aware of. I heard, anyways, the fourth greatest B movie of all time. Interesting. I don't know. It was a lot of fun. I'll say my concluding remark, there's nothing inside, but I guess you wouldn't really expect it. Probably fortunate it's even on Blu-ray. That's the back. You can kind of pause on that for a minute and see all that's on there. The one thing I did take from this, though, is, how awesome would it be for a filmmaker to get the rights to this film to do a remake, but do it as a straight horror piece. I mean, a sort of a throwback to the old drive-in days when, man, you would just gnarly things, man, you would see at the drive-in. I would love to see that happen. And make it different, in terms of putting the spoof and the mock noir stuff off by the wayside and just taking it straight on as a genuinely horrific grindhouse sort of splatter fest, that involves chainsaws, man. I think it would be great. Anyways, Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, here from 1988. And man, I was just graduating high school in 88. Oh man. Anyways, throw this on your B list. I know Chris, man, he's probably already seen this movie a million times. If you're a B guy, gal, check it out. But be advised, check it out. All right. Anyways, we always end these things off with Go Bills.